The path towards a peaceful resolution in the Ukraine war remains fraught with significant obstacles as of late May 2025. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov recently articulated Moscow's stringent conditions for any future peace agreement. These demands notably include guarantees preventing Ukraine from aligning with Western political or military blocs. Furthermore, Lavrov reiterated Russia's stance questioning the legitimacy of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's government. Instead, he suggested that any potential negotiations should occur with Ukraine's parliament, the Verkhovna Rada. This position complicates the prospects for direct talks between the current leaderships. Moscow also firmly rejected a proposal, reportedly suggested by former U.S. President Donald Trump, for peace negotiations to be hosted by the Vatican, indicating a preference for specific negotiating frameworks. Adding another layer to the complex diplomatic landscape, former U.S. President Donald Trump announced that Moscow and Kyiv were purportedly preparing to commence negotiations aimed at achieving a ceasefire. This announcement reportedly followed a lengthy telephone conversation he held with Russian President Vladimir Putin. President Putin, in separate statements, expressed a conditional readiness to work towards a peace accord. However, he emphasized the necessity of addressing what Russia terms the root causes of the conflict. These causes prominently feature Ukraine's potential future membership in NATO. It is widely anticipated that Russia would also demand the withdrawal of Ukrainian forces from 4 regions partially occupied by Russia, a condition Ukraine has consistently rejected. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has voiced strong skepticism regarding Russia's genuine commitment to peace talks. He has accused Moscow of merely attempting to buy time to regroup and rearm its forces for future offensives. President Zelensky has consistently underscored the critical importance of active United States involvement in any meaningful peace process. He has warned that any distancing by the U.S. would primarily benefit President Putin and his strategic aims. Crucially, Zelensky has firmly ruled out any possibility of withdrawing Ukrainian troops from the eastern and southern regions of the country as a precondition for talks. Meanwhile, Pope Leo XIV has expressed an interest in hosting peace negotiations, a suggestion that has reportedly been welcomed by several U.S. and European leaders, including Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, offering a potential, albeit challenging, alternative venue. European leaders continue to exert pressure on Russia. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz has stated that European Union leaders are prepared to intensify sanctions against Moscow if the aggression persists. Echoing this sentiment, German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius accused President Putin of deliberately stalling any substantive peace efforts. In a coordinated diplomatic move, Germany and Denmark have publicly called upon China to leverage its influence with Russia to encourage a peaceful resolution. Responding to these calls, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Mao Ning expressed Beijing's general support for peace efforts, though the extent of China's willingness to actively mediate remains unclear. Simultaneously, Russian officials and state-controlled media have intensified efforts to question the legitimacy of the Ukrainian government and its potential negotiating team, a tactic seen by analysts as aimed at delaying negotiations and preemptively setting conditions for reneging on any agreements, ultimately pushing for regime change in Kyiv. As of May 2025, the conflict in Ukraine continues to be characterized by intense fighting and gradual shifts in territorial control, with Russia maintaining its hold over approximately 1/5 of Ukrainian land. Recent reports from Russia's Ministry of Defense claim the seizure of the Marine village in the Sumy region and the Novolanivka village in the Donetsk region. However, Ukraine has not officially commented on these specific claims. Independent analysis from the Institute for the Study of War confirms that Russian forces recently seized Odrodny, located in the Kurakov direction of Donetsk Oblast. Further Russian advances were noted northeast of Troitsky, also in Donetsk Oblast, highlighting the persistent pressure exerted by Russian forces in the eastern parts of Ukraine. These incremental gains, though often small, contribute to a slowly changing map of control. Russian forces have reportedly made other recent advances across various sectors of the front. These include areas near Vovchansk in Kharkiv Oblast, a region that has seen renewed Russian offensive operations. Progress was also noted by Russian units near Toretsk in Donetsk Oblast and around Velika Novosilka, further south in the same oblast according to ISW assessments from May 22. Russian troops also pushed forward northeast of Kharkiv city, with particular focus on the contested town of Vovchansk. There have also been unconfirmed Russian claims of advances southeast of Tetkino in Russia's Kursk Oblast, an area bordering Ukraine, and near Radkivka and Kindrashivka in the Kupiansk direction of Luhansk Oblast, suggesting probing attacks or localized gains in these areas as well. Despite the consistent Russian pressure, Ukrainian forces have also achieved some recent tactical successes. Notably, Ukrainian troops recently advanced near Toretsk in Donetsk Oblast, as reported by ISW on May 22nd and 23rd. This indicates the dynamic nature of the fighting, where both sides can make gains, even if localized. In Russia's Kursk Oblast bordering northeastern Ukraine, limited fighting continued, with unconfirmed Russian claims of advances near Tetkino, while Russian forces also reported repelling a Ukrainian attack near Novi Put and a reconnaissance attempt in the Glushkovsky Rayon. In the northern Sumy Oblast of Ukraine, Russian forces persisted with limited offensive operations, but these did not result in confirmed advances, suggesting effective Ukrainian defensive actions in that particular sector. The operational tempo remains high in several key areas. In Kharkiv Oblast, Russian forces have continued their limited offensive operations near Vovchansk, but without making further confirmed advances as of May 23rd. In Luhansk Oblast, particularly in the Kupiansk and Lyman directions, Russian forces maintained offensive pressure, though without significant breakthroughs. Russian ground assaults notably intensified in the Lyman direction, reportedly taking advantage of increased foliage and challenging weather conditions. Donetsk Oblast remains a major focal point, with continued Russian ground assaults near Chasiv Yar and south of the city, as well as ongoing offensive operations in the Seversk, Pokrovsk, Novopavlivka, and Kurakov directions. Meanwhile, on the southern axis, encompassing Zaporizhia and Kherson Oblasts, Russian forces continued assaults east of Hulyai-Pol and offensive operations without confirmed advances, indicating a more static but still active front. A significant development on the humanitarian front occurred on May 23, 2025, when Ukraine and Russia conducted a substantial prisoner of war and civilian exchange. This exchange saw a total of 390 individuals returned to each side. According to the Russian Ministry of Defense, the Russian contingent included 270 POWs and 120 civilians. Similarly, Ukraine received 270 of its military personnel and 120 civilians. This carefully negotiated reciprocal release brings a measure of relief to hundreds of families anxiously awaiting news of their loved ones. Such exchanges are complex logistical and diplomatic undertakings, often involving lengthy negotiations and the involvement of third-party mediators, though specific details of mediation for this instance were not immediately publicized. This recent exchange is reportedly part of a larger agreement brokered previously. The understanding, said to have been reached during discussions in Istanbul, aims for a more comprehensive 1,000 for 1,000 exchange of captives. The May 23rd event thus represents a significant step towards fulfilling this broader commitment. Large-scale exchanges like these are vital not only for the individuals directly involved, but also as confidence-building measures, however small, in a conflict marked by deep mistrust. They offer a rare glimpse of cooperation amidst the widespread hostilities, underscoring a shared, albeit limited, adherence to certain humanitarian principles, even as the broader war rages on with undiminished intensity across multiple fronts. Beyond the completed exchange, discussions between Moscow and Kiev concerning further major prisoner swaps are reportedly ongoing, as per information from Al Jazeera. These negotiations are inherently sensitive and often protracted, requiring meticulous verification of lists and agreement on the terms and locations for the transfers. The successful execution of the May 23rd exchange may provide some momentum for these future discussions. For the families on both sides, the prospect of further exchanges offers a continued glimmer of hope for the safe return of those captured or detained. The international community, including organizations like the International Committee of the Red Cross, often plays a crucial, though frequently discreet, role in facilitating these delicate processes. The treatment of prisoners of war and detained civilians remains a critical concern under international humanitarian law, including the Geneva Conventions. The return of these individuals allows for medical assessments, psychological support, and reunification with their families, which are essential steps in addressing the human cost of the conflict. Each successful exchange serves as a reminder of the individuals caught in the midst of geopolitical struggles. The efforts to secure their release and ensure their well-being upon return are a testament to the enduring importance of humanitarian action, even in the darkest of times. These events also highlight the need for continuous monitoring of conditions for those still in captivity on both sides of the conflict. The shadow of alleged war crimes continues to loom large over the conflict in Ukraine. On May 22, 2025, the Donetsk Oblast Prosecutor's Office initiated an investigation into deeply disturbing reports. These reports allege that Russian forces executed 2 Ukrainian prisoners of war near the settlement of Udakny. Such allegations, if substantiated, constitute grave breaches of the Geneva Conventions, which explicitly protect captured combatants from violence, and particularly from summary execution. The immediate launch of an investigation by Ukrainian authorities underscores the seriousness with which these claims are being treated, though the challenges of gathering evidence in active combat zones are immense and require meticulous, often dangerous work. This specific investigation occurs against a backdrop of a significant and alarming increase in reports and circulated footage purporting to show Russian forces executing Ukrainian POWs. This disturbing trend has been noted throughout 2024 and has continued into 2025, according to assessments by the Institute for the Study of War. The proliferation of such imagery, often shared on social media channels, adds to the psychological trauma of the war and fuels calls for accountability. Verifying the authenticity and context of such footage is a complex task for investigators, requiring digital forensic expertise and cross-referencing with other available intelligence to build credible cases for potential prosecution. Further contributing to the grim picture, new details have reportedly emerged concerning a separate incident: the execution of Ukrainian POWs by Russian forces that allegedly took place in November 2024. Evidence connected to this earlier event, as highlighted by ISW on May 22, suggests the potential involvement of high-level Russian military commanders. If proven, such command responsibility would point to systemic issues, rather than isolated acts by rogue soldiers. This raises profound questions about the orders given to Russian troops and the prevailing culture within units operating in Ukraine, making the pursuit of accountability at all levels even more critical for international justice mechanisms. The imperative for thorough and impartial documentation of all alleged war crimes by all parties is paramount. International bodies, including the International Criminal Court and United Nations, mandated commissions of inquiry, play a crucial role in this process. Their investigations aim to gather evidence that can be used in future legal proceedings to hold perpetrators accountable for violations of international humanitarian law. The pursuit of justice, however lengthy and arduous, is essential not only for the victims and their families, but also for establishing a historical record and potentially deterring future atrocities. The long-term impact of these investigations on any post-conflict reconciliation and societal healing cannot be overstated. Section 5. The war from above air, missile and drone campaigns intensify. The skies over Ukraine remain a contested and dangerous space, with both sides employing a wide array of aerial assets. Between May 22 and May 23, 2025, Russian forces launched extensive missile and drone strikes targeting numerous Ukrainian regions. These included Sumy, Dnipropetrovsk, Donetsk, Kharkiv, Kyiv, Zhytomyr, Odessa, Chernivtsi, Chernihiv, Poltava, and Ivano-Frankivsk oblasts. Ukrainian air defense systems worked tirelessly to counter this barrage. Official reports indicated that Ukrainian forces successfully downed 91 drones during this period. An additional 59 drones were reportedly lost or suppressed through the effective use of Ukrainian electronic warfare capabilities, highlighting the evolving technological battle in the air. The impact of these Russian aerial assaults continues to be felt by civilian populations and infrastructure. During the May 22 to 23 attacks, Odessa Oblast was struck by 2 Russian ballistic missiles, resulting in the tragic death of at least 1 civilian. This incident underscores the indiscriminate nature of some of these strikes, or the risk of collateral damage even when military targets are intended. The preceding night, May 21 to 22, also saw Russian forces launch a significant wave of missile and drone attacks across multiple Ukrainian regions. On that occasion, Ukrainian air defenses reported shooting down 112 drones, with additional enemy drones suppressed by electronic warfare systems, demonstrating Ukraine's improving capacity to intercept aerial threats. Ukraine, in turn, has continued its strategy of targeting assets deep within Russian territory, employing its own drone capabilities. Recent Ukrainian operations included drone strikes aimed at the Energia enterprise in Yelets, located in Russia's Lipetsk Oblast. Another notable target was the Patriot Expo Center, situated near Zelenaya Rosha, in the Moscow Oblast. These strikes demonstrate Ukraine's intent to bring the consequences of the war back to Russia, targeting facilities perceived to support Russia's war machine, or hold symbolic value. The use of increasingly sophisticated long-range drones by Ukraine marks a significant development in its ability to project force and disrupt Russian logistics and infrastructure far from the immediate front lines. The aerial dimension of the Ukraine war is characterized by constant innovation and adaptation. Both Russia and Ukraine are heavily reliant on unmanned aerial vehicles, or UAVs, for reconnaissance, targeting, and direct attack roles. The conflict has become a testing ground for new drone technologies and electronic warfare systems designed to counter them. For civilian populations, particularly in frontline regions and cities frequently targeted, the persistent threat of air raids, missile strikes, and drone attacks has become a grim reality of daily life. The psychological toll of living under such constant danger is immense, contributing to displacement and widespread anxiety, even in areas far from the ground fighting. Section 6. Russia's internal landscape, ideological currents and military restructuring. Within Russia, President Vladimir Putin's administration is actively promoting an informal state ideology aimed at consolidating societal support for its long-term objectives, including the ongoing conflict and potential future confrontations. This ideology, as observed by analysts like ISW, is rooted in Russian nationalism and emphasizes a strong opposition to perceived Western encroachment and influence. It also champions strong family foundations and traditional values as pillars of Russian society. Alexander Bastrykin, the head of Russia's investigative committee, has publicly supported the idea of enshrining elements of this ideology within the Russian constitution, signaling a move towards a more ideologically unified state narrative designed to bolster domestic cohesion. In a move that appears to challenge the post-Soviet order, Russian authorities are reportedly reviving claims that the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991 was an illegal act. This narrative, if pursued formally, could have profound implications, potentially being used to deny the sovereignty and territorial integrity of former Soviet republics, most notably Ukraine and Belarus. Such historical revisionism serves to create a legal and ideological pretext for Russia's current actions and future ambitions in what it considers its sphere of influence. It reflects a broader effort to reshape the historical understanding of the late 20th century to align with contemporary geopolitical goals, justifying expansionist policies under the guise of correcting historical injustices. Amidst these ideological shifts, the Russian government is also implementing measures to increase state control. President Putin recently approved an experimental application designed to monitor the locations of migrants residing in Russia. This program is scheduled to run from September 1, 2025 to September 1, 2029. Migrants who do not comply with the tracking requirements could face deportation. This initiative suggests an increasing focus on internal security and surveillance, potentially linked to concerns about social stability or the need to manage labor resources more tightly during a period of protracted conflict and economic strain. It reflects a broader trend towards increased state oversight over various segments of the population. Significant changes are also occurring within Russia's military leadership structure. The newly appointed Russian Defense Minister, Andrei Belousov, recently confirmed the appointment of Colonel General Andrei Mordvichov as the commander of the Russian ground forces. This appointment is noteworthy, as Mordvichov is reportedly expected to implement positional warfare tactics more broadly. Such a shift might indicate an adaptation to the current realities of the Ukrainian battlefield, which has often been characterized by entrenched defensive lines and slow attritional advances. These leadership changes and tactical adjustments reflect ongoing efforts by the Russian military to refine its strategies and command structures to better meet the challenges posed by the protracted and costly war in Ukraine. Section 7. Economic warfare sanctions, asset seizures, and financial pressure. The economic dimension of the Ukraine war continues to see new developments, with Western nations seeking to curtail Russia's ability to finance its military aggression. Finland recently announced its intention to utilize approximately 90 million euros, around $101.35 million, derived from frozen Russian assets. These funds are earmarked for the purchase of ammunition destined for Ukraine. This decision is part of a wider international effort, with an estimated $300 billion in Russian sovereign assets having been frozen across European Union member states and other G7 countries since the full-scale invasion began in February 2022. The use of these frozen assets for Ukraine's benefit remains a subject of intense legal and political debate globally. In another move to tighten the economic screws on Moscow, the European Union is reportedly preparing to lower the price cap imposed on Russian seaborne oil. The current cap stands at $60 per barrel, and the proposed reduction would bring it down to $50 per barrel. This measure, expected to be part of an upcoming sanctions package, aims to further diminish Russia's oil revenues, a critical source of funding for its state budget and military expenditure. The effectiveness of the oil price cap has been a topic of discussion, with evidence of Russia employing various methods to circumvent it, including the use of a shadow fleet of tankers and non-Western insurance providers, presenting ongoing challenges for enforcement. Efforts to enforce existing sanctions regimes are also ongoing. Polish authorities recently intercepted and seized a significant shipment of tires, amounting to 5 million metric tons, which were intended for civilian Boeing aircraft operating in Russia. This seizure was made on the grounds that the shipment violated international sanctions prohibiting the export of such goods to Russia. This action highlights the complexities of monitoring and interdicting illicit trade flows, and the commitment of some nations to rigorously uphold the sanctions framework. Such measures aim to degrade Russia's access to essential components and technologies, impacting various sectors of its economy, including aviation, which relies heavily on Western-made aircraft. The cumulative impact of sanctions, asset freezes, and other economic measures is undoubtedly placing considerable strain on the Russian economy, though its resilience has, in some aspects, exceeded initial Western expectations. Russia has sought to mitigate these effects by reorienting its trade towards non-Western partners, particularly China and India, and by implementing various domestic economic support measures. Nevertheless, the long-term consequences of economic isolation, restricted access to technology, and diminished investment are likely to be substantial for Russia's economic development. Simultaneously, the war and the associated economic disruptions continue to have far-reaching effects on the global economy, contributing to energy price volatility, food insecurity, and inflationary pressures in many countries around the world. Section 8. Belarus, a deepening alliance in Russia's war effort. Belarus continues to deepen its cooperation with Russian defense enterprises, solidifying its role as a key partner for Moscow in the ongoing conflict against Ukraine. This collaboration extends to the joint production of critical military hardware, including aircraft and other military equipment. Such integration of their defense industrial bases allows Russia to potentially leverage Belarusian manufacturing capacity to sustain its war machine and circumvent some Western sanctions on military components. The strengthening of these ties indicates a strategic alignment that goes beyond mere political support, moving towards a more integrated military-technical partnership between the two allied states. Further evidence of this deepening military cooperation is the signing of contracts by Belarus for the procurement of small arms ammunition from Russia. This development, noted by the Institute for the Study of War on May 22, suggests that Belarus is not only facilitating Russian operations but also potentially bolstering its own military stockpiles in coordination with Moscow. While Belarus has not formally committed its own troops to direct combat operations within Ukraine, its territory has served as a staging ground for Russian forces, and its logistical and material support remains crucial for Russia's military efforts along Ukraine's northern border. This support makes Belarus an indispensable, albeit non-combatant, ally in the current conflict. Despite the increased cooperation in the defense sector, there were no reports of significant or unusual military activity within Belarus on May 23, 2025, according to ISW assessments. This suggests that while the underlying partnership is strengthening, there was no immediate indication of Belarus preparing for a more direct or overt combat role in the war. The Belarusian leadership, under Alexander Lukashenko, appears to be performing a careful balancing act, providing substantial support to Russia while stopping short of full-scale military involvement that could draw direct retaliatory action against Belarus itself or lead to significant internal dissent. The geopolitical implications of Belarus's steadfast alignment with Russia are considerable. This close alliance raises concerns among neighboring NATO countries, particularly Poland, Lithuania, and Latvia, which share borders with Belarus. The potential for Belarus to become more directly embroiled in the conflict, or for Russian forces to expand their presence and activities on Belarusian soil, remains a significant factor in the regional security calculus. Such developments could further escalate tensions between Russia and NATO, transforming Belarus from a supportive partner into a more active front in the wider confrontation, thereby increasing instability in Eastern Europe. Section 9. Concluding Reflections: An Unfolding Tragedy in Eastern Europe. As we observe the situation on May 25, 2025, the war in Ukraine remains a profoundly multifaceted and deeply tragic conflict. It is characterized by relentless and brutal fighting along extensive front lines, intricate and often frustrating diplomatic negotiations that have yet to yield a breakthrough, severe and widespread humanitarian consequences for millions of Ukrainians, and profound economic impacts that reverberate globally. The overall situation continues to be exceptionally volatile, with daily reports of military engagements, civilian casualties, and shifting international responses underscoring the persistent instability and the absence of any clear path towards an imminent resolution. The future remains deeply uncertain for all involved. The human cost of this war is staggering and continues to mount with each passing day. Civilian casualties, including deaths and injuries, are a regular occurrence, often resulting from shelling, missile strikes, and drone attacks on urban areas and critical infrastructure. Millions of Ukrainians have been forcibly displaced from their homes, becoming internal refugees within their own country, or seeking safety in neighboring nations and beyond. The psychological trauma inflicted upon the population, especially children and those who have witnessed or experienced direct violence, will have long-lasting effects. The immense and ongoing need for humanitarian aid, medical supplies, and long-term support for affected populations cannot be overstated. The international community's response to the war continues to evolve, marked by ongoing debates and divergent opinions regarding the most effective strategies for supporting Ukraine and achieving a lasting peace. Discussions about the provision of military aid, the scope and intensity of economic sanctions against Russia, and the viable pathways towards a negotiated settlement are continuous. While there is broad condemnation of Russia's aggression, differences persist in the specific approaches favored by various nations and international blocs. This complex global dynamic reflects both the divisions and the unities within the international community, as it grapples with one of the most significant geopolitical crises of the 21st century. Ultimately, the future trajectory of this conflict remains profoundly uncertain. Ukraine demonstrates an unwavering determination to defend its sovereignty, territorial integrity, and its chosen Euro-Atlantic path. This stands in stark contrast to Russia's strategic objectives, which appear to include the subjugation of Ukraine, the redrawing of European security architecture, and the assertion of its own sphere of influence. Given these deeply entrenched and opposing positions, the path to a just and sustainable peace will undoubtedly be long and arduous. Continued international vigilance, a commitment to factual and unbiased reporting, and sustained diplomatic efforts are essential to navigate this perilous period and work towards an end to the suffering.